Betsy and Thomas here for the American Intelligence Media. Thomas, is this true? I have heard that Joseph Mifsud is dead, and you're the only person that I know that could possibly have the answer to this.
Well, unfortunately, Mueller signed his death warrant when he told the lies from page 1 to page 448 of his pathetic witch hunt document that the only Russian that could be identified was Joseph Mifsud. By the way, that's not his name. His last name is de Gabriel. No one knows his first name. And today I'm going to give a eulogy for him because, yes, we do believe he's dead. So, let's start. Mueller is going to testify before Congress. Now, what that means is the king of lies, the father of lies, the demon spawn of every falsehood, the inventor of the excuses for the 9/11 commission, the cover-up, covering the trail of the criminals, that is who Robert Mueller is. So in this case, when he goes, he's not going to answer any questions. He's going to focus all on obstruction of a case of collusion or conspiracy that didn't happen, so therefore the obstruction couldn't happen. Plus,
wait a minute, are you kidding? Before he even testifies, I'll have these nonsensical rules written that none of us out here knows that say literally, okay, you can't ask any questions about Joseph Mifsud. I mean, that is how insane Congress is when they go and they have testimony.
Yeah, they consider him dead the day after that Hillary's lawsuit against a whole bunch of people, including Joseph Mifsud, stated his name in that lawsuit. And in the lawsuit, it says that they couldn't find him to serve him, so therefore they presumed that he's dead. Now, that was Hillary's lawyers, Perkins Coie, trying to find him. Well, first off, we're going to have to do, in his eulogy, we're going to have to tell his biography, but let's just set this up the way that it needs to be. First off, Joseph Mifsud, in Mueller's report, is the only Russian named. The only Russian named except for the owner of Concord Catering, Prokoshin, who, friend of Putin's, who in the report it states Joseph Mifsud worked for the IRA, the Internet Research Agency. Complete lies. I mean, Joseph Mifsud, everything about Joseph Mifsud in Mueller's report is a lie.
Well, wait, let's go back. That he actually says that Joseph Mifsud is a Russian?
He clearly states he's a Russian spy.
And does he provide any proof of that?
He gives one paragraph description of him, and then he goes on.
What is it, like a description that CNN provided?
It looks like it was taken from Wikipedia, the far left encyclopedia that changes the talking points for the Democrats every day. You can watch Wikipedia change every day. So if you want to see something funny, take anybody in the news and read their Wikipedia for a week. In between, it'll change. And it always goes with whatever CNN says. So anyway, the point is they've blamed everything on Joseph Mifsud because they say that he was this agent who was involved in Papadopoulos. But what we must remember is the following. Let's just start this off properly. First off, sorry, Joseph Mifsud, that you as an Italian rogue intelligence agent got caught up in a mess which we call, let's see, what do we call it? We call it...
Well, it depends on when the activities were occurring, because it could be a hurricane, Operation Hurricane, Crossfire, right? It could be Crossfire Hurricane, yeah. It could be, well, let's just call it really what it is, the Queen's attempt to overthrow Donald Trump and the United States of America.
Well, yes, it depends on what country you're in. Here in America, we call it Crossfire Hurricane. We call it the Witch Hunt. We call it Spygate. In other countries, they call it, we call it here also, British Gate, Crown Gate. The Committee to Impeach is the one that I love. That was my favorite one. They really showed some foresight with that when Strzok and Page and the gang set up. They had 12 different names for this group. Now it's called Italy Gate. Now, we have to explain why it's called Italy Gate, and this may shock you because it has been implied that because the same time that Brennan set up basically the entrapment of George Papadopoulos, he did it with not just one person, he did it with Joseph Mifsud. This is, by the way, Joseph Mifsud was very close friends with John Brennan. He was there for the Riyadh bombing. He was there when Joseph Mifsud was on Tehrik el-Faisal's intelligence group and think tank. In other words, Joseph Mifsud, along with John Brennan, along with Robert Mueller, were 100% complicit with what happened on 9/11. Period. Remember, Joseph Mifsud was the number one intelligence trainer for the Saudi intelligence. And when they say that Joseph Mifsud came up missing, no, he didn't. He didn't come up missing. I'll describe his best buddy and financier, Dr. Stephen Rowe, here in a minute. But Stephen Rowe says he was in Italy. No, then he was seen in Sicily for the G7, and then he was seen in Moscow, and he was seen in Saudi Arabia after supposedly he disappeared. And by the way, all those places he was acting as, of course, an agent. He is an agent. He is not an agent of America, though we pay him. He's not an agent of Britain, though they pay him, and they involved him in everything from the Cambridge intelligence groups early on. That's how they pulled him in. But basically, he is a low-level intelligence person who got kicked, who was an academic. His degrees are all in education.
For which team is he a low-level intelligence person?
That's the problem. He has worked for America, for the CIA and the FBI. He has worked for Britain, particularly through coordinating with Stefan Halper when he was in MI6. He works directly for Italy as a spy, and he helped Stephen Rowe buy the only foreign university in Italy, the only place that they train intelligence officers from around the world in Italy, in Rome. And who's it ran by? Vincenzo Scotti, the previous interior minister. And this is the very person who invited Papadopoulos to link campus. This Joseph Mifsud, remember, the second that George Papadopoulos, in March of 2016 joined the Trump team, he was invited by Italian rogue intelligence and British rogue intelligence and USA rogue intelligence through Arvinder Sambai, who was his handler, who worked with him in the London Center of Law Practice, and is the person who actually sent him to Rome to meet Michael Gaeta, who is at the FBI spy in our embassy in Rome there, who was coordinated by Gina Haspel out of London. So we have Arvinder Sambai working with Gina Haspel, Michael Gaeta, in the very following John Brennan's orders to set up George Papadopoulos in Rome through Joseph Mifsud. And when that didn't work, a few months later, they had Alexander Downer try to set up George Papadopoulos. When that didn't work, actually earlier, coincident of that, is Stefan Halper trying to set up Papadopoulos as well as other people in the Trump team.
Well, where is Five Eyes in all of this? Are they spying on all these people?
Well, the Britons actually probably had the control of the whole thing through Arvinder Sambai because she is the handler of Robert Mueller and has been since 9/11. And she hasn't gone anywhere. She's the FBI coordinator in London, the top person. And she's now no longer in that position because she's out in these rogue groups, these groups that Mifsud was involved in, some of the ones I've mentioned. There are many of them, and they use those to take ex-intelligence people into them. They train them in law practices relating to counterintelligence.
So then it would
terrorism.
So then if Gina Haspel was there in London when all of this was going down, then it would be really hard, a stretch of the imagination, to believe that she's sitting there as the director of the CIA and doesn't know exactly what happened.
Impossible to know.
And has she reported that to her boss, the president?
No.
Because that's really not her boss, is it? Who is her boss?
Her boss was the head of the intelligence, the Joint Intelligence Committee, Sir Carr. And then the people who have left the MI6, well, the current MI6, MI5 people were involved in this, plus those who have left there, Sir Richard Dearlove, Stephen Halper, Lord Malik Brown.
So is Gina Haspel right now working for the United States of America or for foreign agents?
She is absolutely compromised because she believes in Five Eyes. She believes that Britain is our friend or that Italy can be our friend for special circumstances. Let me describe Link Campus University. It's fake. It's where they train intelligence agents, ex-intelligence agents and current, how to handle the legal issues of counterintelligence terrorism and how to set up situations where you need counterintelligence. In other words, rogue CIA is what I call them. They're rogue intelligence officers. And they go out and what do? They stir things up. So what? So they are needed. And what do? They take these groups like the fake London Center for Law Practice or the London Academy of Diplomacy. That's where that was particularly Joseph Mifsud, Joseph de Gabriel's. I don't believe his first name is Joseph. I think I know his first name, but I'm not going to say it. But let's just say that these people who have these organizations send out, say, young lawyers who are in practice in university, and they set them up by sending them to the places that they need intelligence from. And then they report back to the university that sent them. Link Campus University is one of these. It's fake as can be. No one in there is an active Italian intelligence agent. This is an embarrassment to the Italian government. It's such an embarrassment that when this came out, that Stefan Rowe, who is married to Olga Rowe, one of the most famous fashion designers in Russia, should I call him his real name? His real name is Baron Stefan Rowe because he owns a castle on a lake in the United Kingdom where they made him a baron. He also owns a British nuclear power plant, but he's basically Russian. He also wanted to become a spy. So years and years ago, he started working with Joseph Mifsud, and they bought Link Campus University in Rome. And he became a spy. So Stefan Rowe got to go to the Cambridge Intelligence meetings, the Cambridge Intelligence seminars. He got to go to Halulek meetings. He got to go to all these things. Groups like Orbis Business International, the Christopher Steele runs, who was controlled by Stefan Halper, who was controlled by the Brits all the way up to the top. So the point is that Stefan Rowe is corrupt as can be. After Joseph Mifsud came up missing, he actually wrote a book called The Faking of Russiagate, the Papadopoulos case. And what he does there is he basically says that he is the friend and financier of Joseph Mifsud. Joseph Mifsud's a straight-shooting guy. He's a Maltese professor. That's all he is. He's not an intelligence agent. And that everything's all good, and that he was not a Russian spy, because that's what Mueller makes him out to be, right? Well, Stefan Rowe is the Russian spy. Stefan Rowe introduced him to the only real Russians that Joseph Mifsud even knew. Joseph Mifsud didn't know any Russians, okay? So Joseph Mifsud, after Stefan Rowe bought Link Campus University in 1999 and started to become a spy, he basically roamed between different universities and ripped them off one after the next. And when you read the Wikipedia entry, you have to read after every one of them. It says he was a diplomat for the Maltese government. No, he wasn't. He tried to be a diplomat for a couple months and got kicked out. It says that he was at the University of Stirling in Scotland. Yeah, till he got kicked out. And then he tried to connect the London Academy of Diplomacy with that, and they found it to be so corrupt that he had to go to the University of Anglia, which no one has even heard of. And then when that wouldn't take him, and he started working with Arvinder Sambhai, his handler, and Alison Saunders and all the rest of the corrupt Brits, in the London Center for Law Practice, they had to go to the smallest university they could find, the University of Agrigento in Sicily. Hello? Sicily. Sicily? Hello? He is part of the mafia. He worked for the mafia. Mifsud did. He worked for Italian intelligence. We know this because all you have to do is look at the people who ended up at Link Campus, because they were some of the most corrupt people there were. Not only Vincenzo Scotti was the interior minister, but you have the representative to the socialist representative, basically, to the EU, best friends of Clinton, Gianni Patella, runs the place, runs Link Campus, as corrupt as can be. And then you have the guy who was involved in all this scandal where literally people were kidnapped and killed and so on and so forth. And everybody knows this, Roberto de Legami. These are the people who run Link Campus University. It could not be any more corrupt. But that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Well, before you tell us more, of course, as you're talking about this being a mob operation, one has to consider Hillary Clinton, because she is the daughter of a big mob boss and apparently has turned the world into a whole mob operation. So can you talk a little bit more about her relationship to this?
You can't name anybody crooked that isn't connected to the Clinton Foundation, from George Soros to Lord Malik Brown to Jeffrey Patty to you name it.
Alexander Downer? I mean,
yes.
They gave a huge donation down there in Australia.
Jonathan Weiner, Jill,
Jill McCabe?
Jill McCabe was connected through the donations from the Clinton Foundation for her run in Virginia, and Terry McAuliffe, is that his name?
Yeah.
He was on the foundation, and he's as corrupt as... Anyway, you can't name anybody who's on that foundation that isn't corrupt.
Well, then...
no such thing.
Okay, well, so current events. We have now found out that they're going to send something that they're calling Ruth Bader Ginsburg to speak at an event at the Clinton Foundation. What is that all about? Are they that desperate to roll out something that resembles Ginsburg? Because I do not believe it's her. And if it is her, I want to know what her medical miracles are, because the last time we had a public sighting of Ruth, she was at death's doorstep. She had lung cancer, a broken rib, and could hardly speak. So if she's vibrant and up and walking around, people out of here want to know. And so, and there she is. She's going to be in a speaking event at the Clinton Foundation. What is that, Thomas?
Conflict of interest. She can't speak at the Clinton Foundation. They're under 5 separate investigations, none of which have ever ended, by the way, and now there's new investigations. So she cannot speak at the Clinton Foundation. That is illegal, because it is already under investigation, and it could go to the Supreme Court. So she's not speaking there, and that's not her,
but it's propaganda being pushed out on us, folks. So don't believe it until you see with your eyeballs a person standing there giving some kind of report to reporters, real reporters, not fake news reporters, and you see her and you know it is Ginsburg. You got to keep pushing the Supreme Court to give us proof of life.
This is an attempt for legitimizing what isn't true. That's what the University of Malta is all about. The Link Campus University is supposedly an extension of the University of Malta. Yeah and no, absolutely no. Why? Because they have nothing to do with them. They say that Joseph Mifsud was a professor there. There's no evidence of that whatsoever, that Joseph Mifsud ever taught at the University of Malta. There's no evidence he was ever a cabinet minister in Malta. There's no evidence he was ever a tenured professor at any of the universities he was at. To call him a distinguished professor is a complete joke. Now, let me go back to the story. Mifsud did not even know that he was being set up. This is so pathetic. Mifsud's secretary that just came to him out of the blue is named Simona Mangianti, and now her last name is Papadopoulos, because she is George Papadopoulos' handler. She was also Mifsud's handler. He doesn't speak a word of Russian. He couldn't speak to his girlfriend in Ukrainian. But supposedly they went to Moscow all the time. Supposedly they went to No, they did not. These are lies. And BuzzFeed's article, just another big fat lie from BuzzFeed, that was to legitimize the idea that Mifsud wasn't killed by Mueller the day after, because Mueller does the bidding of Hillary Clinton. The day after Clinton said he's presumed dead, he disappears, and he's ordered by Link Campus to disappear. He's ordered by Vincenzo Scotti to disappear. And then he doesn't disappear. And then he appears again and again, by the way, with his wife, fiancée, Anna, supposedly, and their girl baby that she was pregnant with 7 months the last time he saw her, but then he never communicated with her again. Lies. And then, no. Now, mainstream media wants to say he cropped up again in April of 2019, so he's not dead. That's to say, they were giving an excuse to Mueller to say, oh no, Mifsud's not dead. I didn't kill him, just because he's the only person that I can charge, the only real flesh and blood person. Oh, by the way, he interviewed, this is beautiful. Mifsud was in America in April of 2017. Mueller's investigation didn't start until May. So Mueller says he interrogated questioned and interviewed Mifsud while he was here for a big event that the State Department held, where they invited Mifsud to come.
Well, why would he? Why would he do that? He doesn't even know yet. He's going to be doing the report.
Mueller says that he interviewed him a month before he started the Mueller investigation. We know that Mifsud was only in the country during that time. We know where they met and who they met with because there were witnesses. And then we know that he was taken aside and he was interviewed and he was given complete immunity. Because after that, they didn't go after him. And later, now remember, Crossfire Hurricane was started in July of 2016, but they didn't pick up George Papadopoulos until January or February, two different reports, February probably of 2017. And then, wait a second. But then the investigation didn't start until May 2017, but they interviewed Mifsud, and they later said that had Papadopoulos not lied to them in their interview in February, they would have retained, arrested, and so on and so forth Mifsud. No, those are all big fat lies. Mifsud was an agent being used by America because the Brits were coordinating it, but it was all happening on Italian soil, so the Brits wouldn't get blamed because the Brits had already committed themselves by falling at the feet of George Papadopoulos all the way up to David Cameron, Boris Johnson, you name it. They made George Papadopoulos a hero. They created societies, groups, things that he was the head of that he didn't even know what they were. His fiancée, Simona Mangiante Papadopoulos, says that when Mifsud hired her to work at the London Academy of Diplomacy, she was the only secretary, and she didn't even know what they did. No one knew what they did because they didn't do anything. And now she's Papadopoulos' handler. But the big deal here is there's one Russian. That Russian is not Mifsud. That Russian is Ivan Timofeyev, who is in this think tank that I've told you about. A very evil Putin think tank. Well, there's another person who was in that think tank who just happened to show up at the office of Mifsud the day that he became a director of the London Center of Law Practice, and her name was Natalia Kutapova Jamram. And she happens to directly be connected to Putin, got them connected to Ivan Timofeyev, the only Russian really in all of this, who said he was going to connect Joseph Mifsud and Papadopoulos to Putin. Now, here's the big fat lie. Natalia is the one who set up Mifsud so that he could become a member of the Valdez discussion group, the Putin-centered, London-based group that met to discuss for a year Russian ideas, and then they would meet with Putin through the coordinator, Ivan Timofeyev. So guess what? Mifsud and Stefan Rowe were set up by Natalia. She was a Russian spy. Simona set Papadopoulos up. She's still an Italian spy. Oh, but that's not good enough. That's not good enough, folks, because when all that didn't work, and then they tried the Mifsud connection, they tried the Downer connection, entrapment, they tried the Stefan Halper connection, then it got really good and juicy because when Downer came over, he brought with him a spy named Erica Thompson, who's another honeypot that George Papadopoulos fell for. So that's 3 in a row. Oh, and then when the Americans came over, Peter Strzok, Bill Priestap came to meet with Gina Haspel and Arvinder Sambai. I'm going to tell you something now that nobody else has ever said, and it's the truth. And I know it's the truth because it's the simple reality. It doesn't even take an IQ of 1 to figure this out. But when they came over, they brought something with them, okay? And why did they come over? They came over to set up the entrapments with Mifsud, with Halpern, with Downer. And one honeypot after the next didn't seem to work, and George Papadopoulos just would not get interested in stealing the 33,000 missing, erased, supposedly, Hillary emails. Now, first off, stop right there. 33,000 missing emails. We don't care about those. We know there were top secret emails in there she should go to jail for, but we already knew they were top secret in the rest of them. So why are the missing emails important? Because That was their story from 2015 from the Democratic National Committee, that the Russians had stole all these things. So we now know that Christopher Wray has testified, and now we know from Freedom of Information Act request information gained by Judicial Watch that Comey always had the missing 3,000 emails. He always had all the emails, all 780,000 emails.
Of course, because they're the Federal Blackmail Institute. Of course they keep stuff like that.
Of course the NSA had copies of it. That's just stupid to think otherwise. So there were copies. And Christopher Wray said there was a copy on a jump drive and a copy on 6 CDs. Okay? Well, Comey gave those to Brennan. Brennan gave them to Bill Priestap and Peter Strzok, and they brought them to Gina Haspel to give them to Alexander Downer, so that Alexander Downer, once Stephen Halper, once the setup with Stephen Halper, Downer, and Mifsud, there was a threefold attack. If one of them could work and get George Papadopoulos interested, they were going to give him through Ivan Timofeyev, the only Russian involved in that, the coordinator of the Valdy discussion group, which both Mifsud and Stephen Rowe joined in 2014. They only had one meeting, one time they went to Russia. That was it. Before they tried to get Papadopoulos to join. Timofeyev was supposedly going to give the Russian hacked 33,000 emails to Downer, and Downer was going to say that he received them from Papadopoulos. That's the reason he tried to get Papadopoulos drunk that night. That's the reason that Downer himself got drunk that night. That's the reason that Erica Thompson, the honeypot, the spy he brought with her, who set up the meeting a couple months before during one of these intelligence seminars, the honeypot who tried to entrap George Papadopoulos, they were recording all of it.
Okay. All right, that's a lot. I want to encapsulate this so folks have a nugget to walk away with. You're saying that James Comey, the director of the FBI then, and John Brennan, the head of the CIA, actually had a plan to take those emails, knowing that they were they had secret and classified information, but they were going to take them and then plant them, give them to a Russian agent. They had, of course, a couple of intermediaries, but the objective was to give it to a Russian agent who could then turn around and give it to George Papadopoulos. And then they would frame George. So is that correct?
And that would frame Trump.
And that would frame Trump. So what is the crime that's been committed by Comey and Brennan just even setting up that plan?
Oh, no, they'll say that that's national security, counterintelligence, and that was to see if Trump was connected to the Russians.
Well, maybe we need to have a patriot counterintelligence and put their butts in prison.
That's what we're doing right now.
Okay. Because, citizens don't have to put up with this. We can just put an end to it.
Oh, yeah. And the tapes, those are exculpatory tapes. So both Mifsud had tapes, and that's the reason he's dead, more than likely. And that's why we're doing a eulogy for him. Who killed him? That would be Mueller signed his death warrant, but he was either killed by the Sicilian mafia, the Russians, the Saudi Arabian intelligence, our intelligence, the Rogue Intelligence, our Rogue Intelligence, CIA Rogue Intelligence, the British Rogue Intelligence, or the British intelligence, or the intelligence, or the members of Link Campus. He probably had, like Mussolini, many holes in his body. They all had to shoot a bullet into that man before they believed he was dead, because he held all the secrets. Now, unfortunately, they didn't silence Simona Mangiante, Papadopoulos. They didn't silence her, and they didn't silence George Papadopoulos. And then Alexander Downer came out. His alibis were sick and pathetic. He has the exculpatory tapes. We know that. He wouldn't have made his report 2 months after he supposedly did this. He failed. Mifsud, Halpern, and Downer all failed. They all failed miserably. They had everybody on their side, and they all failed because they left a huge trail, because they were so desperate to try to make this entrapment work. And because George Papadopoulos just kept going for the honeypots and not for the carrot. And the carrot was the 33,000 missing emails. They thought if they could catch him with those, because they were going to catch him when he came back on the airplane. Remember, Simona told him when they tried to do an entrapment on him, and by the way, Before Papadopoulos even knew he was being investigated, but after the February 2017 interview, they tried to flip Simona. Actually, it was before that they tried to flip Simona. When they implanted Simona in the office with Mifsud, after that, when Papadopoulos came on the scene, the FBI went over, questioned her, tried to flip her, tried to get her to wear a wire to get Papadopoulos to say that he wanted these emails and that he would be happy to accept them from Russia.
Okay, so is Simona still Italian intelligence?
Absolutely.
Okay, so then how is she going to be granted citizenship? Wouldn't they have to do a even if she's marrying Papadopoulos, wouldn't they have to do some kind of background check? Wouldn't it come up that she is in the middle of this and could be a national security risk to have her here as a citizen?
Well, Italy isn't one of the Five Eyes, but they're like Israel.
But her personal actions were counter to the United States.
That doesn't matter. Look at Arvinder Sambai.
Well, she's not a U.S. citizen.
Oh, she could come over and become one in a minute. Stefan Halper's a U.S. citizen.
Well, isn't there a way for us to say, no, we don't want any more of your criminal thugs over here?
Yes, but Simona's telling the truth. And Simona, unfortunately, George Papadopoulos is only waking up to when she's on the interviews with him. Watch his eyeballs. They get big because she reveals more and more in the public because that's her job. Her job was always to handle him.
She's still a honeypot, and she's just going for the fame. And then once she gets her fame and her name and her citizenship, she'll dump George.
Yeah. Now, BuzzFeed and their interview with the fake Anna, the Ukrainian 31-year-old girlfriend of Joseph Mifsud who had a girl baby, all lies. All lies. They didn't give you any information to show that those text messages they took pictures of were real. They blurred out the face of Joseph Mifsud sitting with his supposed fiancée. Why would they do that? Why would they blur out the face? Everybody's seen his face. Mifsud was a slimy counterintelligence pig that everybody was told was this and that. He claimed to be a European Union ambassador. He claimed to be a top politician from Malta. He had nothing but lies, but he schmoozed his way all the way up to get pictures of himself with top intelligence agents in Britain. That was for what? To make it look like he was a Western Britain asset, British asset, or an American asset, anything but Italy. When Italy got caught with their pants down on this one, 6 directors were fired. Now, there was another scandal involving kidnapping and death, which these people were involved in. But there were 6, 3 of them top intelligence agent leaders in Italy that were all canned. Some will say it was because of Italian Gate, but no, it's both. It's because Link University campus was called out for what it is, because the prior interior minister, the prior head socialist of Italy are all running a counterintelligence training school. This is absurd, and they allow people like Mifsud to come in and claim. Mifsud claimed to teach at the University of Malta. No evidence. Mifsud claimed to teach at the University Link campus. No evidence whatsoever. He claimed to teach at Stirling University in Scotland. No evidence of that, except that he did steal money. He claimed to teach in Sicily. No evidence, but he did steal money and did leave in disrepute. There's no place that Mifsud did not leave in disrepute, and that's the reason they threw him under the bus. They knew from the beginning, because remember, he was friends with Robert Mueller, because Robert Mueller is friends with Arvinder Sambai, who is his British handler. So from the get-go, Robert Mueller had to protect Joseph Mifsud until he was dead, and then when he knew they were going to kill him, then he blamed everything on him. Now he can't be found. Isn't that quite a convenience? No one in the Mueller report was guilty except for Mifsud. And they even, Ivan Timofeyev, the real Russian, they make excuses for him. And then we know that at the same time Comey was running his 28 crimes of treason using Carter Page, a 4-year-long FBI asset, tried to penetrate the Trump team. There's lies that say that Papadopoulos was sent in to penetrate the team. No, Papadopoulos, no. Carter Page was sent in, but he didn't know he was sent in. And then he was used, and then they accuse him of being all these things, and then he doesn't sue them? His whole reputation is ruined? Why? He's an FBI asset. He was part of the Uranium One group that took down the Russian director of the Uranium One company here in America that was working with Hillary Clinton and the foundation, giving her huge amounts of money, according to Jonathan Weiner. So we have the corruption is thick at all levels, but here's the reality. Joseph Mifsud is an idiot, or whatever his name is. Oh, I know his name, but I'll just call him fake professor. But anytime someone wants to be called professor, they're a fake. Mark my words. Professor Chandler, are you listening? Anyone who wants to demand everyone call them professor is a fake. So I'll call him Professor DeGabriel, because that's Joseph Mifsud's name, except he's not a professor. He does have a PhD, but he isn't tenured, and he never really taught anywhere. Okay, so we'll call him Fake Professor DeGabriel. Was used because he was a low-level ignoramus, like Carter Page was called a useful idiot, and like George Papadopoulos was called the most naive FBI, CIA entrapment candidate in history. No one has ever been more stupid than George Papadopoulos to think that he deserved all those titles and all those honeypots. But now he's coming out and he's telling us some of the details. Those details busted Link Campus University. It busted the people who were running it. It busted the Brits. It busted the ex-intelligence agents from the British. It busted the current intelligence agents from the British. It busted just about everybody that you can imagine that was involved in this, because right up to Alison Saunders, Nellie Orr, Bruce Orr, because of Papadopoulos's book and the fact that he's out telling all these things, and he's so naive, he just says them. I mean, he's so naive, he still doesn't know. Though Simona has in public in front of him said, yes, I was your handler in so many words, he still doesn't understand that. So that's okay. And he doesn't understand that Azra Turk was an FBI asset that was brought over by Peter Strzok and William Priestep to support Stephen Halper's attempted entrapment. So when it comes down to it, in 2018, when Stephen Rose says he met with Mifsud and signed a power of attorney, that's a lie. But that did give all of Stephen Rose's belongings, all of Joseph Mifsud's belongings. But of course we know that's not even his name. And so most everything that Stephen Rowe is telling us is a lie also. And so it revealed a really big Russian spy who had already penetrated Italy, Malta, and Britain. Now, I'm going to end on something that you may not like, but it's the truth. And that's the following. That the University of Malta was founded in, I think it was 1592. And it was founded by Jesuits. And in 1768, it was taken over by the Knights of Malta. In other words, the Catholic Church. So the University of Malta is nothing more than the intelligence development agency for the Vatican and for Italy, which is one and the same, which also includes the Mafia of Sicily, because the Vatican Bank handles their money. So when we're talking about anybody, whether it be the Supreme Court justice who's going there to speak this year at the University of Malta and get paid a huge amount of money, or anybody, it's corrupt. Anything to do with the University of Malta, well, that's where Joseph Mifsud hid himself out.
Well, let's be clear, it's Neil Gorsuch that was supposed to go there and teach for the summer, and then Kavanaugh goes to Britain. And I don't know the status of that, but it was reported prior to the summer that they do it. And I'm like, what are our Supreme Court justices doing teaching at these law schools overseas in our enemy camp? I'm sure there are a lot of American law schools that would enjoy having them for the summer. And I say they're there to pick up their payola, and they're dirty.
Yes, and it's an absolute indication of the power of the triumvirate of the Vatican, the City of London, and Washington, D.C., because that's what we're talking about here. We're talking about the worst of the Vatican, the Jesuitism of which has now taken over the Knights of Malta. But remember that the ex-kings and queens and the current kings and queens of the world all bow down to the head of the Knights of Malta, who all bow down to the Pope. Even the Queen of England, who is a member of the Knights of Malta, takes fealty oaths to the Pope. So when this comes down to it, do not ever underestimate the insidious power of the Italians, whether it be banking, politics, intelligence, it doesn't matter. we're now seeing the tip of the iceberg, and we're seeing that triumvirate still rules to this very day. And many of the bad habits of the city of London were taught to them by Italians, and we in D.C., who use New York City as our bank, we follow those same exact rules, and we are still being controlled by Britain, and Britain is still being controlled by the Vatican. So when it comes down to it, this is nothing new. This is the same old, same old. They took the lowest Italian, pathetic, rogue guy attempting to be a rogue intelligence agent. They threw him under the bus. So this is the eulogy for fake Professor Di Gabriele, a.k.a. Joseph Mifsud, and the fact that Robert Mueller signed his death warrant with his fake accusations in his pathetic special counsel report, The Witch Hunt. So all I can say is, don't feel sorry for Anna and the little baby girl. There is none. Don't feel sorry for Joseph Mifsud. He deserved everything he got. And remember, Robert Mueller, when he testifies, every word out of his mouth will be a lie.